Thank you and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and my, haven't we grown? Unlike the British economy in most years that George Osborne has been Chancellor. Now, something's gone wrong with the British economy. It is no longer delivering for tens of millions of hard-working families. Instead of living standards being on a long-term rising path, for most people they are in long-term decline. And that's a trend that's not been reversed by recent better news on growth. And given the beneficial impact of technological advance, that to me is completely unacceptable. Young people finishing their education and moving into the world of work are left with the prospect, and some would say the near certainty, of being poorer and having fewer choices in life than their parents did at the same stage. More poorly housed, paying much higher prices for essentials such as food and energy, with less disposable income and less securely employed as well. In such a climate, it's no wonder that a sourness and a dourness now pervades our economic life. We have to change this. We have to restore the economics of hope if we are to ward off the economics of envy that will drag us down, and if we're to get a grip on that deficit that George Osborne has spent 4 years not really being able to close. Not an economy that thinks greed is good, but one that acknowledges ambition as the driving force behind progress. I was sitting in a meeting of the European Parliament's Economy Committee the other day. Someone's got to do it. And someone on the platform actually said something sensible, which does occasionally happen. It was the head of the Eurogroup, a man called Jeroen Dijsselbloem. He didn't, alas, say, I think we should scrap the euro. He's not quite that sensible. But he said that working people across Europe are overtaxed. As he put it in the jargon, there's a tax ramp on labour. Work for ordinary people is taxed across Europe to a higher extent than in other developed economies. And what's true for those sclerotic Eurozone economies is also true of Britain. Under Labour, national insurance increased, while income tax thresholds have failed to keep pace with inflation under recent governments of all colours. And the latest component of wage stagnation has completed a toxic brew. I don't think you should have to be an alarm clock hero, to use Nick Clegg's awful phrase, in order to want to get out of bed in the morning. You should be able to do so knowing that devoting your energies to work will improve the circumstances of your family and society at large. So what more can we offer to our young people moving into the world of work? And what can we offer to millions of existing workers to help them earn a decent living and to improve the lot of themselves, their families, their communities, and ultimately of their nation? Well, we can allow British employers to put British workers first when it comes to vacancies without the fear of being sued for discrimination. That would at last put some substance behind Gordon Brown's phrase all those years ago about British jobs for British workers. And as Stephen Wolfe set out, we can and we must bring in a points-based migration system to end the open door that has led to massive oversupply at the bottom end of the pay scale, compressing wages for millions of working people. But a government can do something else directly. It can get its own hand out of the pay packets of millions altogether and take a bit less from millions more. It can cut the taxes it imposes upon work. Now, this requires a government to spend less itself, of course, and UKIP would have a very significant head start here by getting our foreign aid budget back under control and bringing home the money that goes to pay EU membership subscriptions. You're immediately looking at £20 billion a year saving. By reforming the Barnett formula, which so unfairly discriminates against English taxpayers, you can save several billion more. Now, when we publish our manifesto for next year's general election at the outset of their campaign, our whole programme will be finalised and rigorously costed. This week, we're setting out some of our key priorities to be financed out of the savings we've already identified. So let us start by putting ourselves in the position of a school leaver who at 18 gets a full-time job on the minimum wage. Currently, that young person is getting stung for tax, paying 20% on about £2,000 of earnings, £400 a year. It may not sound like that much, but this is being taken away from people who work full-time without yet being able to afford life's basics. So I say yes to letting people earn a basic living for themselves before the state asks them to pay for the livings of other people. So UKIP will support a personal allowance that is equivalent to full-time minimum wage earnings, expected to be up to £13,500 by the time of the general election. Our MPs will champion this and vote for it in the House of Commons during the next Parliament, and will hope to find they will hope to find others in other parties of like mind with whom to make common cause. Now, raising the personal allowance is a policy, most of you will know, suggested by UKIP many years ago. I, in fact, welcome the fact that the Liberal Democrats have pinched the idea. After all, you have to find something nice to say about them. And, of course, George Osborne now acts as if he thought of it all along. Understandable, perhaps, given the way he's thrown other tax-cutting pledges, such as a reduction in inheritance tax, overboard. But now let's return to the life story of our school leaver, and let's raise our sights and theirs. They work hard. They become experienced. They get a promotion and a pay rise or two. Remember them, pay rises. They can happen. They used to happen. Our young person meets someone, wants to marry them, to have children, to give those children a good start in life, to put down a deposit on a home and then move to a bigger one when the space runs out. So she works hard and more promotions follow. The bills are pouring in though, and pretty soon the 40% tax threshold is looming too. Now, being dragged into 40% tax, the old rich man's rate, is something that, according to George Osborne, will fill our self-starter with glee. It will make her think she's made it and turn her more Tory, he reckons. Talk about out of touch. Perhaps that's why Mr. Osborne is making so many more people pay the 40p rate, why he has lowered the threshold for it by £2,000 from the level he inherited from Labour's Alistair Darling. Incredibly, a Tory Chancellor will go into the next election with a 40p threshold lower than that which existed under Labour half a decade earlier. And this is the same man, remember, who wanted to withdraw all child benefit from every household that had anyone paying tax at 40p as well. Now, under pressure, he watered down that plan a little, but it clearly exposed, in my view, the contempt he has for the aspirational people of Britain, those who start out with very little, but through their own ambition and determination and sheer hard work seek to improve their own fortunes and those of their families. They are the people that the Bullingdon boys appear to have come into politics to mock, and they're the people that I've come into politics to fight for. At the last budget, UKIP said our policy would be to raise the 40% tax threshold to at least £45,000. Well, today we're able to make a better offer. The policy we'll take into the next Parliament will be to cut the 40% rate where it starts to 35%. So a 35% rate would start at earnings just above £42,000 and apply all the way to £55,000, and only at earnings of £55,000 would the 40% rate become payable. And in time, we'd like to go further. An eventual tax structure of a personal allowance at the level of the minimum wage, followed by a 20p standard rate, a 30p intermediate rate, and a 40p top rate would be simpler, flatter, and in my view, compatible with both a dynamic economy and a fair society. But that's a longer-term aspiration because politics is all about priorities, and our priority has to be to help those at the bottom of the earnings scale and then show we're also on the side of those who have reached the middle ranges and want to achieve even more. Now, I mentioned a little earlier George Osborne casting aside that promise he made on an inheritance tax cut with indecent haste. Well, let me tell you what UKIP wants to do to inheritance tax. Scrap it all together. And I don't shy away from tackling the Labour Party head-on in debate about this, because in my view, doctrinaire socialists look at death duties from the wrong end of the telescope. Instead of being envious of those who inherit, I say our primary response should be to respect those who earned the money, paid tax on it, invested it wisely, and wish to pass it on to their chosen heirs. And envy at the good fortune of those heirs should never be used as a justification for depriving property owners of this basic right to pass on the wealth they've created. Tax was already paid on this money in life. It should not be levied in death as well. Now, that's our principal position. It's not as if the super-rich pay inheritance tax anyway. They're the ones that can afford the advisors to make sure they don't. So neither should it hit the estates of hard-working people who made something of themselves in life and wish to decide what happens to their footprint on this earth when they leave it. Now, I have a few other priorities to tell you about. I'm very disturbed by a particular feature of the economic model that Labour and the Tories have fashioned in the last 20 years or so. We might call it the Starbucks economic model. Very large multinational corporations paying low wages have been enabled to bring in unlimited numbers of people from abroad who then become eligible for substantial in-work benefits financed by British taxpayers. Yet those same multinationals use accounting techniques to minimise or even eliminate their own corporation tax liabilities. And once you tot up the housing benefit, the tax credits, the child benefit and the rest that a foreign staff member of Starbucks or Domino's Pizzas can claim, I can tell you it puts their income tax contributions well in the shade. And that's before the costs of the public services they may wish to consume are factored in. So the tax base is hollowed out, while the costs of the public realm are ramped up. We can and we must take action against this. First, through a points-based immigration system that discriminates in favour of highly skilled, high-earning applicants and limits low-skilled ones. But also, we need to make the big corporations pay their fair share, not least so we can help the small and medium-sized homegrown businesses reduce their own tax burden. So UKIP proposes that a Treasury Commission should be set up using the best brains of that Whitehall department to design a turnover tax for large businesses. Every major company would have to show it had paid a set proportion of its overall turnover in corporation and other taxes, or would face an additional charge to bring it up to the minimum. This would work as a backstop to the tax system and ensure every big company pays a fair share of tax. Now, I propose that this Treasury Commission does something else as well. I want it to investigate the feasibility of imposing a luxury goods rate of VAT. It makes no sense to me that VAT is levied at the same rate on budget items as it is on items purchased by the hard-pressed. As it is on premium ones that are the preserve of the very well-heeled. And it seems to me that a luxury goods rate of, say, 25% could raise substantial extra funds from the wealthiest people. I would suggest such a rate be built around a few simple thresholds, such as, say, £200 for a pair of shoes, £1,000 for a bag, or £50,000 for a new car. I say that that way extra money could be raised for the public realm from the very wealthiest people without dampening incentives for wealth creation in the way that higher income tax rates risk doing. And I have a final proposal I want to tell you about today. How many of you realise that wealthy foreign nationals from outside the EU are every day being exempted altogether from VAT on their purchases of goods in Britain? Not many, I bet. The Treasury calls it tax-free shopping, and it basically means that foreign nationals can claim back the VAT on purchases by filling out a form at the airport. So foreign tycoons can get 20% off their purchases in London thanks to a Treasury waiver that is in turn bankrolled by ordinary British taxpayers. It cannot be right for a country to treat its own nationals as second-class citizens in this way. And this scheme was implemented back in the days when London seemed to be slipping in the world rankings to visit and spend money in. These days, our capital city is the world's leading playground for the international rich. The Treasury is very coy about how much revenue is lost to VAT rebates to foreigners, but HMRC calculates it is at least £300 million a year, and I've seen estimates which point to it being significantly higher. This perk should be scrapped. Let the message go out to wealthy people from across the world. Britain's a great tourist destination. By all means, go shopping in our high-end stores. But British taxpayers will no longer pay your VAT bills at the airport because they are struggling just to pay their own. So a slimmed-down income tax system that rewards hard work and achievement at every level, an immigration system that ends the continual undercutting of working people by imported labour, a turnover tax to ensure multinationals make a fair contribution, and reforms to VAT to help us get a bit more off the rich when they spend it in order to take a bit less from working people when they earn it. These are UKIP's tax priorities. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not extreme, we're mainstream. The British people know that the three parties of the Westminster political class have let them down. They are looking for an alternative. And if we continue to develop moderate policies underpinned by British common sense, then that alternative will be us. Thank you.